Not even in the middle of the camera, am I? G'day guys. So I know I haven't uploaded a video in quite a while now, but that's because I've been having recording issues. Yeah. But also in the meanwhile, I've been kind of looking back on my old projects to see what kind of mistakes I made back in the day and how I was doing everything wrong. I also happened to notice that Apple Canon hasn't actually been uploaded to my channel before. I mean, after all, it's the one that started Basshoof Records. So I figured since it's such a heavily outdated song, why don't I just break down every single element of that song so I know what not to do next time. But anyway, as you can see, we are in the project right now. And as you can tell by these little long audio files here, this was made in many separate projects. So first off, I think I'm going to start in the intro. So right here we have a riser. And it's got a little bit of reverb on it. And then we have... I think we have this little Applejack sample here, but I think it's got some flanger on it. And then we have these reverse samples here to bring in the key of the song. And then we have... I think it's being reversed. Oh, now I know what it's from. So this is being reversed and it's got a little frequency shifter and an OTT to make it more full. Now what I think I'm going to do is going to the intro and see how we made that. So here we are in the intro. So what we have here is a choir synth made completely from Fruity LSD. Let's see how it sounds without all the effects first. We have serum effects with them slightly detuned, reverb, and an EQ. Then we also have this little bass pluck here. So this one I was actually quite proud of. It's basically just a saw wave with a low pass filter and it's a little bit EQ'd. So without all the effects it sounds like this. What I basically had to do was put an OTT on it to make it sound gnarlier. Then I put a vocodex on it to give it a more unique sound, I guess. A multiband compressor, an EQ that looks like that, and then a limiter, and just a basic hat. Well, my CPU is not happy. But let's see what we have here. Oh, okay, some orchestral sections here. So we have this little bass thing. It's a little bit silent in the back, but it kind of brings out the brass section in here. With the effects, I have I think it's a detune. Yes, it is. Another reverb, another EQ, and another limiter. And then what do we have here? Oh, another brass section. Okay, so that's got some reverb on it, but then it also has this little distortion here. This, I feel like, makes brass sections much more powerful, you know? And just a few little EQs. Staccato strings. Oh, okay. This is a string section I made in Massive. Okay, so it's got a pitch LFO on it. It has 7 voices, low pass filter. Wow, it's just a very plain reverb just all the way up. Then let's see how it sounds with the effects. Okay, this reverb really makes it come to life, you know? So does the EQ. And then we have this little lead thing here. So it's not playing the same melody as the main melody, but I feel like adding a different melody to the main melody kind of gives it plenty of body and tone and like makes it sound a little bit different to what it normally is. And then these leads here. These give the main saw lead a bit more character. So this is a preset in Harmless. Basically sounds like a time piano. So that's kind of like a saw-ish pluck. Then going onto this little build-up here. Let's just go through them individually. So on the start here, we have this kick. Then after that, these little brass sections hit in. So what I did was I cut up some of the spaces to like have it stop and then start again. Like that. And then what do we have here? We have this mega Bram sample, which is basically 2 saw waves with 8 voices but with no stereo width. And they have these filters on them. Then after that I gave it this little distortion. And it has no effects. Then there's this little like effect thing. Okay, so the speed of this is 8/1, so that it fills out an entire 2 bars here, which also has no effects. Cool. And then this Bram sample. Then after that we have this little riser thing. Building up into this little part here. So without all the effects, and with all the effects, I basically gave it an EQ, multiband compressor, another EQ, another EQ, and a gross beat. This is what's giving it the downfall effect, like the pitch down. And then we have a kick snare pattern and the brass sections from earlier. Oh yeah, they're being filtered up. And then we have staccato strings, but then they slowly get faster around here. Then we have this little reverb envelope here, which kind of like gives it some tension. And there's this riser. And there's this riser. This is just a build up into the kick and snare pattern here. We have another riser. So this is the same riser as here. Another riser. Another riser. Another riser. Then we have these little Foley here. Then we have these little bass stabs. So here's how I made them. So it's basically a growl wavetable being FM'd by this really high synced saw. Then for the effects I have a high notch, a flanger, compressor, and for the effects I have reverb, OTT, a really odd EQ yet again, and fruity wave shaver. This kind of, I feel like, gives it some distortion. And then, so we have this water drop samples, and then an impact. This filler here, pretty much just a white noise filler. And then we have this growl here, which I'll show in a different project. Okay, so here's how I made all the little growl sample filler things. So first of all, here's the raw sample. It's basically got an EQ and distortion, and it's got a time stretch thing on it. And then it's being put through a vocodex, and the carrier is pretty much just a detuned saw wave. So together they sound like this. Then after that I've got this EQ. Then it's got an OTT, a noise gate, another OTT, stereo enhancement, distortion, and a time stretchy. That's how you make that. And I've also got this Applejack sample here. So as you can hear, it's kind of like very glitchy. And here's how it sounds raw. So this has pretty much got a tiny bit of EQ on it, an OTT, and then it's got this glitchy effect on effector, and the way I made it stutter so much like that is I turn the bypass on and off again, so that's why these automation clips are like that. So as you can see, when bypass is turned on, that means it starts getting glitchy, so that's how I did that. And then I've got that, and then we have, there's the big filler sample that's in the build-up. Let's see how they sound raw. They sound very different. So let's see what we have. We got detune and compression, a filter, vocodex, bunch of OTTs, reverb, and distortion. Let's move on to the drop now. So quick disclaimer, this drop was actually made around the time that I started using Serum, so I had pretty much no idea what I was doing when I made this. So here are the basses. Okay, so my CPU is not happy, so I'm just going to play each individual sound first. So I've got a sub. It's actually got distortion on it, and it's got a low pass filter. And then I have this bass here, which I've actually made before. So let's see how it sounds with all the effects first. Okay, so this little macro here is actually automating the frequency in a notch filter here, which is kind of giving it the wow sound effect. And then macro 2 is automating the pitch in the phase here, while 3 is automating the phase and the filter here, so it's going. So let's hear how it sounds with all these effects here. So first of all, we got a noise gate. Oh, and we also have a notch filter here. And we also have a bandpass filter here, which is being automated by this. I feel like this is giving it some more vocally character to it. Then we have 2 multiband compressors, an OTT, Valhalla room. Now this actually gives it a lot of stereo width, like it gives it a lot more power, like it's big and giant. I basically got the decay time all the way down to 0.14 seconds, and the mix is only halfway there. And we have some saturation here, and then a weird EQ to cut out the lows, and distortion. And then layered with the main bass, we have a heavy distorted sub bass with white noise with the lows cut out. So this kind of gives the sub more room, so it's not clashing with that one. And we also have, this is like a detuned heavy hybrid trap saw with a bunch of voices with some EQ and distortion. Then after that we've got, it's got a ton of voices on it and it's got some OTT on it. And then with the background sounds, we have a crash here, and we got these little crowd samples in here. And what do we have here? Just a little reverse filler. So is that. We got hats. And then we have this little thing here. Basically sounds like a police siren. So then after the big reverb and the Applejack sample, we have this kick thing here, which basically sounds like this, which is being glitched up with the grain effect on effector. So then after these basses play, we have big distorted subs in there. They basically have a ton of multiband compression and a ton of distortion. After that we've got the signature Applejack growl. Okay, so here we have a bunch of layers. So the first layer is this. This was the first bass I ever made in Serum. So what we got going on here is a bunch of sync wavetables going up like this. So here's what the first one sounds like. And here's what the second one sounds like. And they're both being put through some distortion compression. Here's how it sounds without all the effects. So this has also got the short amount of reverb on it to give it some width. Then it's got stereo enhancer, an EQ, another EQ to cut out the lows, and distortion. And with the other layers here we have this heavy sub. That's basically cutting out the lows to allow the main bass to come through while the high ends are still playing. And we have these silent stabs here to make the song sound a little more melodic in this part. And then there's these things. And I've also got this little filler here. Let's see how the second part sounds. Oh yeah, so we got this bass here. So here's how it sounds with all the effects and the Serum effects. So it's basically got a filter on it. I turned the sync up all the way up to give it some screechiness. And it's got distortion, detune, another combs filter, which is being automated by this envelope here, compression, and another filter that's making it more valley. Then after that we have 2 OTTs, an EQ, multiband compression, and distortion. And here's how it sounds with these 2 macros in action. Then basically these basses play again in this half, then they get cut off here, and then these things play. That pretty much consists of... Let's go to the second half now. So in the second half I have a different bass here. So here's how it sounds without all the effects. And it's basically got a reverb filter on it that's being automated by this macro here, which is also automating the sync and the pitch of the saw that's FMing this wavetable here. Then a filter, compression, detune, and an EQ. And then this macro is automating the frequency modulation and the EQ here to give it some valleyness. And then this macro is automating the time of the LFO. And then this is automating the pitch here. Then it's got some multiband compression, reverb, EQ, and distortion. And it's being automated like this. And then with the sub, I've actually got them dropping down like this. And then we have... And we also have... What's this? Oh, this is being layered with everything to kind of make it a bit different. Then after that, it's basically the same thing, except it's got this as well. Oh, okay, so this is an interesting growl. It's pretty much got no effects except OTT and vocodex. And then after that, I EQ'd it and put distortion on it. Let's see what makes them sound like that. So they're all going through this little effector here, which has the trance preset on it. You can hear it's kind of giving it a volume gate, which eventually slows down like this. And after that, the one macro that's automating the pitch in the saw here is actually being automated like this and then like that. We got this impact here. We have a really interesting growl here. That's basically just a trilobite wavetable with heaps of effects. It's got vocodex on it, bandpass filter. That's basically doing nothing. And then these little fillers are being played on top of each drop. And then after that, we go into the big Applejack growl, and then it builds up into the second drop. So here's what the second build up sounds like. It's pretty similar to the first build up, except it's got the Harmer keys in there. Well, it's also got the outro to it as well. I think we'll show that later. Okay, so here's the second drop. So this has this little kick thing that I made in Massive. I think it's pretty powerful. It's basically got a square wave and some white noise here, with basically some screen filters and bandpass filters. They got 2 clip filters on it to give it that distortion, classic tube to give it some distortion, and it's got multiband compression, more distortion, and it's got the grain effect here for when it glitches out in the first drop. And before that plays, we have this little filler here. Oh, but here, it has these little sine wave lasers here. And then in this half, we have the same bass fillers as before. But then it has this little lead here, which is basically being pitched down like that, and then pitched up like that. And then there's this empty gap here, which is where that glitchy Applejack effect is being played. But then here I have this little massive bass. That's how it sounds without any effects. And then basically the kick plays again, and then we have these distorted subs here that play before this half plays, where the melody is alternated a little bit. Let's just go on to the outro now. So first of all, I've got the 2 little piano leads. The staccato strings in the build-up are played really slowly. And then a string sample. So it's pretty much everything in the intro, but with the kick and snare pretty much. And a hi-hat loop. We have the Bram sample in the build-up, and then the lead from the build-up. Then there's these little things. So that's a tubular bell on Fruity LSD. And then it's got delay, reverb, and a parametric EQ. And then it has this white noise here. And then it builds up into the pre-drop growl. And it has the growl sample here. But it's being stretched really wide, which is laid on top of the big brass sample I made in Massive. And then I exported all the project files into waveforms. Then I compiled them all onto one project, and then I added some little fillers, which I'll go over right now. And I also have this little saw filler in here that plays at the end of each drop. So it's basically got this, 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 and this. So in the project where I compiled everything into one song, I have a bunch of different sounds here that are mostly Applejack samples. So on this little drop here, I have an Applejack sample here, and then these here that are basically acting as chants. And then what's this? Oh, of course. And this is a... So they basically fill out the empty spaces in the song. Then I have this little reverse reverb. I think we have more here. So basically these go for the entire drop. Until it gets to here. This is the second drop where the kicks play in. So that's the Applejack growl with sidechain, and this is... Then on each little section here, there's the reverse reverb sample. That's just Applejack pitched down, and it has a bunch of effects on it. Oh yeah, and there's this laugh sample here. And that has some delay on it, and the dry wet is being automated by this clip here. So I think that might have to do for now. So I don't really have much to say about this other than the fact that I pretty much have learned a lot of mixing techniques since then. You could definitely tell that I had some crazy equalizing techniques. But for the most part it was fun to do. Like I really enjoyed making the Applejack growls and giving it the effects and the Applejack samples that it needed. And the whole time I was making it, I was overall pretty proud of it for my amount of skill back then. And you know what, it was still cool to be the first release on Basshoof Records, which is now no longer. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit different from the other things I do, but with time I'll get back into the swing of things, and I'll be coming at you guys with some more new fresh content. So keep an eye out, or not. You don't have to, it's fine, I'm not telling you what to do. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the project breakdown of Apple Cannon, and I'll see you guys in the next video.